Welcome to the Manly Mythical Story Emporium. I'm your host, Thurston J.Y. Manley, also known as your storyteller's favorite storyteller, also known as the pugilist of pontification. Yeah, you get it. Fighting, pontificating, speaking all obnoxiously. That's me. That's what I do. And this episode is your Halloween special because some people decided, probably the upper 1% or 3% or 4% decided that we don't get It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown this year on TV. Instead, you got to get Apple TV. Now, I do happen to own a copy of the Great Pumpkin, so I will get to watch it, but I feel sorry for those that can't. And it's just a tradition. But today, I'm going to give you 2 Halloween-related stories. My stories tend to be funny, so I didn't do any scary stories. I might throw a scary story at you later, maybe right after Halloween. But the 2 stories I got, first story is All Pimps, No Hoes. All Pimps, No Hoes. And the second story is Soulja Boy in the Church. Soulja Boy in the Church. Actually, I'll change the name to make it a little funnier. I'm going to call it Crank the Soulja Boy in That Church. Crank the Soulja Boy in That Church. Yeah, I'm going to write that down now. I like that better. Crank that Soulja Boy. Crank that Soulja Boy in That Church. It's a longer title, but it's more representative of the story. But today's episode, I'm going to have the 2 Halloween-related stories, and you'll get those after the ad. But everybody be safe during this Halloween time. I'm already having to change what kind of candy I'm going to give out, meaning none probably. It's a big debate within the house whether we should even give candy out this year because of the COVID. I'm going to do something, but I'm going to be watching that Charlie Brown show and go enjoy the new witches. I like it. It's like the old witches, but better graphics and black people. Everything's better with black people and, CGI. And what else did I watch? Oh yeah, the Witches was good, and that's the only ones we watched. That's the only Halloween movies we watch. But I gotta watch Monster Squad. Don't watch it with your kids. A lot of stuff that's not appropriate language in there now, references to the LGBTQ community and others. But right after this commercial, enjoy this episode. First story: All Pimps, No Hoes. Second story: Crank that Soulja Boy in That Church. Crank that Soulja Boy in That Church. Thank you guys. Enjoy. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. The story All Pimps and No Hoes. All Pimps, No Hoes. This happened at Guilford College in 2001. It was Halloween. And just like every year at Guilford, the campus would like to have social events on campus or parties. And the party this year was going to be a big Halloween blowout with foam in the courtyard. And this was amazing to me because it was the first year that I was actually staying in Bryan. And Bryan dorm is a dorm that has suites and a courtyard. And this meant that parties were more communal, for the community. And the doors were open, a lot of loud noise, songs bouncing off the walls. It was very exciting for me. I was hopeful that this party would be great because I can just hang out in my suite, which my window overlooked the courtyard. So this was perfect. They can have the party. I can play my video games. I can open the window. I'm socializing, but I'm not. And then I can go out. So if somebody comes by, a young lady or my homies come by, they can come in, see me, and keep going. And I didn't have to pay a cover, and I'm already at the party. Because I live here, homie, is what I'm thinking. And they were going to announce the theme. Now, Guilford College is a college. It is an organization ran by many people that may not be connected to what we want to say the real world, which happens with larger organizations. You see many groups have faux pas or mistakes or social, non-PC moves, things that are offensive. because, now we live in a society, maybe you want to call it cancel culture or whatever, where you make a mistake and be held against you. And everybody seems oversensitive. Well, this happens. There's a lot of diverse people there, and you got to be aware of it. But even Guilford College, this school that is a Quaker college, helped free slaves and ran an underground railroad, and we got like tie-dye people, and at our spring fling known as serendipity, people walk around in the nude and finger paint on, and there's mud wrestling, and it's just a joyous hippity-dippity good time. Even them, they made mistakes because the student body, government, and president decided to have a party, and apparently this party was going to be offensive. The theme for the party for Halloween was going to be a pimp and hoe party. Now, me, growing up in my generation, born in the 80s, when I became of age to drive or to date women, Snoop Dogg was a popular character. He was known as a pimp. Even younger than that, I've grown up on Dolomite and P.D. Wheatstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law, which are all movies glorifying pimp, as well as Superfly, as well as many others. Many pimp movies that you just admire growing up. And I thought to myself, what's wrong with the pimp and hoe party? So we were going to have a meeting about the pimp and hoe party, because I really wanted to see this film, and it would have been okay with me if ladies decided to dress up somewhat as hoes, if you will. And I had never felt so much in dismay or so wrong for arguing that, at this party we need tons of pimps and tons of these hoes. But I was there, and I was on that side. It's a pimp and hoe party. We're not curing cancer here. We're not burning crosses here, and we're not calling people derogatory names. We're not using the N word for black people, and we're not using the F word for those of the LGBTQ community. So I'm like, what's wrong with pimp and hoe? I was always raised is not what you're called, is what you answer to. And I wanted to see some hoes and some phone. But we had to have a council meeting, and people showed up and protested because they said, who here is for the pimp and hoe party? And I told them basically the argument I said today. And then the right side, which is the other side, saying that as a school that is supposed to be built on these Quaker principles, do you think it's okay for you to support a party that condones crime, which pimping is a crime and prostitution is legal in most areas? Plus there is pimping implies that there is sex trafficking going on, because these women don't want to be on the street necessarily. They don't have the freedom, and they're also transmitting diseases. They're caught at underage. So do you support underage sex trafficking? And I had to say no. The only thing that popped in my head is like, I just wanted to see some hoes and some phone and dress up as a pimp once in my life. Just please. But my argument, that's not what came out of my mouth. I looked dead in that lady's face. I was like, you're absolutely right. I see your perspective on it. Maybe we should call the party something else other than a pimp or hoe party. And they did agree to that it's fine to have a Halloween party. Because I did grow up with, some more conservative people that maybe like different religions like Jehovah's Witnesses, or even some Christians don't even celebrate Halloween, or if they have something at the church, it wouldn't be a Halloween party. They would call it a festival, if you will. So they did agree to have a party, but we could not have a pimp and hoe party. And out of protest of the protest, because there's always a protest within a protest at Guilford, because there's so many warring factions. I don't want to say warring factions, but so many opinions at Guilford, which is so beautiful. Because the reason this is beautiful is that we are young people coming together, finding out our own way of thinking. When those people are not just being sheep or sheeple, as the term that's thrown around the internet now. They decided to not have a pimp and hoe party, but that also went against feminism and women's right to dress and do what they want. Because just because I dress like a hoe doesn't mean you should treat me like a hoe. But if you dress like a fireman and the house is on fire, I'm gonna want you to put it out. That's all I'm saying. But I do agree. Just because you dress a certain way doesn't mean you should be treated a certain way. And these strong, independent women felt like this, as well as their not so strong and independent boyfriends. So when we had this party in protest, so the first protest cancels the party, but we fight that to have the party, but it's no longer a pimp and hoe party. The third protest comes. These ladies come in dressed in suits as pimps. And guess who the hoes are? Yes, you know it. The hoes on the stroll were the boyfriends of these ladies. So these women dressed up in nice suits, very impressive, chains, painted on beards, canes, and hats in men's suits that were very not tailored to cut. So these are kind of baggier suits and vests and things like that. And the hoes were their boyfriends that wore dresses, some of them tight, skimpy dresses, the cheerleader shorts and things like that. And they strolled them around as they hoes. And that was the protest within the Pimp and Hoe party. And my first party in Bryan dorm, being an upperclassman at a foam party, I had to look at grown men in short shorts and dresses being pimped by their women, and it was hilarious. Not the enjoyment I wanted, but it's the enjoyment that I got. So that's where it went down back in 01. It was a party that had all them pimps and none of the hoes. Thank you guys. Crank that soldier boy in that church. Crank that soldier boy in that church. Yes, that's the title of the story. It was 2007. And I was attending a disciples church, which are also known as First Christian Church. You might see them with the chalice, DOC, Disciples of Christ Church. And my church is pretty diverse. It's a majority of a older white church, which you'll see in most churches now, a lot of older people. But this church is mainly white and it's older, and they may not be in touch with the culture at all times, but they do have a lot of love for the youth, and they provide them with programs in freedom. And one of the programs in freedom was the Fall Festival. See, as good disciples or good Christians for the Lord, we do not celebrate Halloween, but we are fine with a Halloween festival and you wearing very creative and appropriate costumes to celebrate the fall, but not the death and or Satan. Yes, Satan. We do not celebrate that in the church, so we have a fall festival. Has all the things that a Halloween festival would be, except for we just don't say Halloween. So we have the bobbing for apples. You will have like that little fishing pole thing where you hook little toys up at. And as part of this event, we decided to invite one of our close friends of mine and my wife's, which is Mr. Uncle John. Uncle John is not of African American descent, but he has a strong love for the African American people, which we appreciate. And he hangs out with us often. The boys love Uncle John. They didn't understand until about 3 years ago that he is not a brother of either their father or their mother, but he's just a fake uncle. But he's a real one. And we invited him to the fall festival because our kids were a lot younger back in the fall of 2007 when Crank That Soldier Boy came out. And he came to the church and came to the festival, and everything went as usual. But the kids were going to surprise us with the program. And the program started off pretty normal. They began telling different stories, scary stories. Like I said, it's just like Halloween. They told us about the events that were going to happen, and there was going to be a dance ensemble, later, and with music. But first, they had some classic Halloween songs they played, like the Monster Mash. Is it a mash? It's the Monster Mash. Yeah, that song. And they played that, played a little Thriller, because that's a Halloween song apparently. And for the last one, they were going to dance for us. And the song that they chose, under the direction of our youth minister at the time. He was the head of the youth, and he was a young fellow as well. He may have been out of college at that time, being 24, going to get his master's, and should not been in charge of music selection. They decided to play a very popular song that many have heard as ringtones up until this time, was Soulja Boy. Yes, Soulja Boy. The song that has I'm Gonna Super Soak That Hoe, which is a reference to a sexual act in which a sheet might be stuck to a woman's back and she gets up and looks like Superman, and then she's been he has super soaked the lady, the madame, and now she's Superman. Yeah, so Crank That Soulja Boy is the song they decided to play. Now some of the older people are bopping to the beat because it's very catchy. This song was voted most 23rd successful song as of 2009 on the Billboard. So one of the most successful hip hop songs of all of the time. Since hip hop's been around, this is one of the top songs that they decided to play. So it's me, my wife, and we were the only minorities there that night. Older white people and their children get on stage and they play the song. And when I heard the beat, I was like, this can't be it. It must just be the instrumental. But he started singing that he was going to super soak that. Oh, a lot of oh was in this version. But they were dancing around the stage and doing all kinds of motions and cranking it and hopping back and forth. And I just laughed, and John just kept elbowing me and like, what is going on? And I was just like, I was laughing and embarrassed at the same time. And then one of the ladies that's the head of the daycare bumped into me and came up to me, was like, oh, don't you like this song? Yay! Oh, Crank That Soulja Boy. And I just looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the song. It's just not what I was expecting to hear in the basement of my church on this lovely fall festival, i.e. Halloween night party. But they started doing dancing, and then an elder finally caught on to the song and realized that it was not appropriate, and you could hear that record scratch across there, and they stopped it, and everything went back to normal. Then there was an apple peeling contest after that, and the pastor got a talking to, the youth minister, and due to that event, and I think one other one, we never saw him again. I do follow him on social media. Shout out to him. I will give you his podcast, but it may be embarrassing. But he has a podcast out there, and he's still alive. My wife has just covered her face, and I just couldn't believe that these little teenage white children were cranking a Soulja Boy right below where my children were dedicated to this church. Hilarious. So just remember, this Halloween, crank that Soulja Boy. Thank you guys. Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Manly Mythical Story Emporium. I'm your host, Thurston J.Y. Manley. Please follow us on Instagram, Manly Mythical Story, or send me an email if you got any story ideas, manlystory@gmail.com. Also, I'm on Instagram, not really active on the Twitter, but I'm on there. Just look for Thurston Manley, or I think it's called Manly Mythical. I think that's what I was able to get in there because somebody had my other stuff. But you can find me on Instagram, Manly Mythical Story Emporium. Please support the podcast. You can subscribe and support and send me some dollars so the podcast can get better and we can maybe have some guests. I've invited a couple guests to maybe tell some stories, to add a little diversity to the stories, to mix it up a little bit. But we'll see. We're trying to work out the technology. If we can get some more technology, that'd be great. And that will come from you guys. But if you listened to it before, you know what time it is. It is time for the final thought. So the final thought, or the random thought from this week, goes to this Halloween period. And thinking about all the sucky candy we used to get back in the day. Oh, the sucky candy. Please give kids better candy this year. Do not give me apples, pencils, and or erasers. Please think about the children. Support the children. This year, I will be projecting probably on my garage the Great Pumpkin of Charlie Brown so people can see it as they walk by. I will also be putting candy on a table with circles so I don't have to get near the nasty little row covers. The wonderful children. And be careful with your costume selections. Blackface is not okay. If it's not your culture, don't wear it. And I think I'll be going as a Jets fan this year because we haven't won any games. So that's a cheap gift. Cheap costume that I can just wear a paper bag over my head with holes on it as I wear my Jets jersey. And it just reminds me of when Halloween happens and it's not Corona time and you're in school. My earliest Halloween school experience, a Halloween party, was 6th grade, Mrs. Gardner's class, and she let us select the music. And unlike my church, we didn't crank the Soulja Boy. We went with the Ghetto Boys. My mind's playing tricks on me. We were smart enough to get the edited version. And I just remember how everybody in this wonderful 6th grade class, when he said, damn, we said, ooh, and paused and looked, and she was fine with it. So shout out to Miss Gardner. Got love for you if you're still around. But remember, the Ghetto Boys, Mind's Playing Tricks on You. That is also a great Christmas song. All right. Enjoy your week, guys. Happy Halloween. Boo-ah.